My parents ignored my last call because of my sister. I called them 17 times, begging them to answer just once. They never did. By the time they finally realized what they had done, I was already gone, and the letter I left behind would change our family forever. My name is Emma, and this isn't just a story about being forgotten. It's a story about what happens when you spend your entire life trying to earn love that should have been given freely. For 26 years, I believed that if I worked harder, complained less, and became the perfect daughter, my parents would finally see me. Instead, every sacrifice I made only pushed me deeper into my younger sister Lily's shadow. Looking back now, I realize that rainy night didn't destroy my family, it simply revealed the truth that had been hiding there all along. People always said I was lucky. "You have such wonderful parents," they would tell me. I used to smile and agree because explaining the truth felt impossible. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. We celebrated birthdays together, took smiling family photos every Christmas, and always looked happy whenever relatives came to visit. But cameras only captured smiles. They never captured what happened after everyone went home. My younger sister, Lily, was the center of my parents' world. If she won a school competition, we celebrated with dinner at her favorite restaurant. If she had a bad day, Mom canceled her plans just to comfort her. If she wanted something, Dad somehow found a way to make it happen. Then there was me. I wasn't treated badly. I was simply overlooked. When I graduated from college with honors, Mom hugged me for a few seconds before asking Lily how dance practice had gone. When I landed my first full-time job, Dad smiled without even looking up from his newspaper. "That's good, Emma," he said. "Keep working hard." Those 4 words were the only celebration I received. Still, I never stopped trying. I helped around the house every weekend. I remembered everyone's birthdays. I bought thoughtful gifts with money I'd worked hard to save. Deep inside, I believed that one day my parents would finally notice everything I had done. But that day never came. Then came the night that changed my life forever. A heavy storm covered the highway as I drove home from work. Without warning, my car began shaking before suddenly rolling to a stop on a dark, empty road. I tried starting the engine again. Nothing. I looked at my phone. 5% battery. With trembling hands, I called Mom. No answer. Then Dad. Straight to voicemail. I called again. And again. 5 times. 10 times. 17 times. Every unanswered ring made me feel smaller than the last. Then my phone buzzed. For one hopeful second, I thought it was one of my parents calling back. It wasn't. It was my aunt. Her message was only one sentence. "Your parents are at Lily's engagement dinner." They turned off their phones so nothing would interrupt her special night. I stared at those words as tears mixed with the rain outside my windshield. In that moment, I finally understood something I had refused to believe for 26 years. No matter how badly I needed them, my parents would always choose my sister first. And before the sun came up, I would make a decision that none of us could ever take back. I sat inside my car for what felt like forever, staring at my aunt's message. The rain kept falling. Cars passed by without slowing down. My phone battery dropped from 5% to 4%. But none of that hurt as much as one simple thought. My parents had made a choice. They hadn't missed my calls by accident. They had turned off their phones because making sure Lily had a perfect evening mattered more than answering their oldest daughter's desperate calls. For the first time in my life, I stopped making excuses for them. About 30 minutes later, a middle-aged woman pulled over and asked if I needed help. She was on her way home from work, yet she stayed with me until roadside assistance arrived. She even offered me a bottle of water and made sure I wasn't alone. She was a complete stranger. Yet she showed me more kindness in one night than I had felt from my own parents in years. When I finally walked through the front door early the next morning, I expected at least one question. "Emma, where were you?" Why were you calling us? Are you okay? Instead, Mom looked up from the kitchen counter. Oh, good. You're home. She smiled as if nothing had happened. Can you stop by the bakery later? We still need Lily's engagement cake. I stood there in silence. She hadn't even looked at her phone. Dad walked past me with a cup of coffee. And don't forget to help me move the tables this afternoon, he said. Your sister wants everything to be perfect. That was it. No concern. No apology. No explanation. Just another reminder that my life came second. Something inside me quietly broke. Not with anger. Not with tears. With acceptance. For the next few days, I acted like everything was normal. I helped decorate the backyard. I arranged flowers. I greeted relatives with a smile. I even hugged Lily and congratulated her on her engagement. She smiled brightly. I don't know what I'd do without you, Emma. I smiled back. If only you knew, I whispered to myself. What no one realized was that my decision had already been made. Months earlier, I had accepted a marketing position in another state. It was my dream job. But I kept postponing my move because I couldn't imagine leaving my family behind. Now I realized something painful. I wasn't leaving people who loved me. I was leaving people who had stopped seeing me years ago. The night before I left, I waited until everyone was asleep. The house was completely silent. I sat alone at the dining table with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. At first, I wanted to write about every painful memory. Every forgotten birthday. Every achievement they ignored. Every family dinner where I felt invisible. But then I realized this letter wasn't about making them feel guilty. It was about telling the truth. I wrote about spending my whole life trying to earn their love. I wrote about pretending I was okay because I didn't want to cause problems. Then I wrote about that rainy night. About sitting alone on a dark highway. About calling 17 times. About realizing I had never been their first choice. Finally, I wrote the sentence that had lived in my heart for years. You didn't lose me the night you ignored my calls. You lost me little by little every time you chose Lily instead of me. That night was simply the day I stopped pretending everything was okay. I folded the letter carefully. Placed it beside my house key on the dining table. Looked around the home I had spent 26 years trying to belong in. Then I quietly walked out the front door. I never looked back. As the sun rose behind me, I drove toward a new life, believing my family would never notice I was gone. But 3 months later, my phone started ringing. And suddenly, the people who never answered my calls couldn't stop calling me. 3 months. That's how long I lived in my new city without hearing a single word from my family. At first, I kept checking my phone. Every notification made my heart race. Maybe Mom had realized I was gone. Maybe Dad wanted to know if I was safe. Maybe Lily had noticed I wasn't around anymore. But the calls never came. After a while, I stopped expecting them. I focused on building the life I had always dreamed of. My new job kept me busy, my apartment slowly began to feel like home, and for the first time in years, I was surrounded by people who actually asked how I was doing, and waited for the answer. It wasn't a perfect life. But it was peaceful. Then one Tuesday afternoon, my phone suddenly lit up. Dad. I stared at his name until the call stopped. A few seconds later, Mom called. Then Lily. Then Dad again. By the end of the day, I had more than 20 missed calls. My stomach tightened. For one brief moment, I wondered if something terrible had happened. But another thought quickly followed. Why now? Why not 3 months ago? Why not the night I needed them the most? The next morning, Dad called again. This time, I answered. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Then I heard something I had never heard before. His voice was shaking. Emma, please don't hang up. I stayed quiet. We finally read your letter. I frowned. What do you mean, finally? Dad took a deep breath before answering. It was still on the dining table. I know, I replied. That's where I left it. Then came the sentence that completely broke my heart. We didn't notice it until yesterday. I closed my eyes. 3 months. My letter had been sitting in the middle of the house for 3 whole months. No one picked it up. No one wondered why my house key was lying beside it. No one even realized I had disappeared. Dad continued speaking through tears. Your mother only found it because she went looking for you. I couldn't help asking. What made her look for me after all this time? There was another painful silence. Then he answered honestly. Lily needed help paying for another wedding expense. Your mom went to your room to ask if you could lend her some money. I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it hurt too much to cry. Even after I had been gone for months. They weren't looking for me because they missed me. They were looking for me because they needed something. Dad's voice cracked. But then your mother opened your bedroom door. Your closet was almost empty. That's when she realized you had really left. He told me Mom had picked up my letter with trembling hands. She read every single word. Every forgotten birthday. Every ignored achievement. Every moment I felt invisible. Then she reached the part about that rainy night. The 17 unanswered calls. She grabbed her phone. The missed calls were still there. 17 of them. Along with my final message. Please. I really need you. Just answer. Dad whispered. She collapsed into a chair and cried for hours. For years, I had imagined hearing those words. I thought they would heal me. Instead, they only reminded me how long it had taken my parents to see the daughter standing right in front of them. Before ending the call, Dad quietly asked. Will you come home? Your mother wants to apologize. I looked out my apartment window. Rain was falling again. Funny how life has a way of bringing old memories back. I took a slow breath before answering. I spent 26 years trying to find a place in that house. Then I quietly added. I'm not sure I can call it home anymore. I ended the call. For the next few days, messages kept arriving. Mom apologized. Dad apologized. Even Lily admitted she had never realized how lonely I had been. Then, one evening, a small package arrived outside my apartment door. There was no return address. When I opened it, my hands began to tremble. Inside was something I hadn't seen since I was 10 years old. And tucked beneath it was a handwritten note that made tears fill my eyes. My hands trembled as I lifted the small object from the box. It was an old music box. Dad had given it to me on my 10th birthday. We had spent an entire afternoon painting tiny flowers on it together. Whenever I turned the little silver handle, it played the same soft melody. Years ago, it had fallen from my bedroom shelf and cracked down the middle. Dad had promised to fix it. He never did. Now, it had been carefully repaired. The crack was almost invisible. Tucked beneath it was a handwritten note. I should have fixed us long before I fixed this. I read those words over and over until my eyes filled with tears. For the first time since leaving home, I cried. Not because the pain was gone, but because someone had finally admitted it existed. For the next few days, I carried the music box everywhere in my apartment. Part of me wanted to ignore every message they sent. After all, they had ignored mine. But another part of me knew something important. Holding on to anger wouldn't change the past. It would only steal my future. A week later, I agreed to meet them. Not because everything was suddenly okay. Not because one apology erased 26 years of heartbreak. I agreed because I needed peace. We met in a quiet park halfway between my new city and my hometown. The moment I saw my parents walking toward me, I barely recognized them. Mom looked older. Dad looked exhausted. For several long seconds, none of us spoke. Then Mom wrapped her arms around me and began crying. "I'm so sorry, Emma," she whispered. I kept telling myself I loved both of my daughters the same. I was too blind to see what I was doing to you. I gently stepped back and looked into her eyes. "When was the last time you asked how I was, without talking about Lily?" She opened her mouth. No words came out. Dad lowered his head. "I thought you were the strong one," he said quietly. "I believed you didn't need us as much because you never complained." I smiled sadly. Strong children still need their parents. They just learn to cry where no one can hear them. Dad covered his face with his hands. Lily slowly walked toward me. She was crying too. "I never realized what you were giving up for me," she said. "I'm so sorry, Emma." I shook my head. "This isn't your burden to carry. You didn't choose to be the favorite. Our parents did." For the first time in years, no one defended themselves. No one made excuses. The truth was finally enough. Mom reached for my hand. "Can you ever forgive us?" I took a deep breath. "I already do." They looked at me with surprise. "But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. I can't pretend those years never happened. If we're going to have a relationship, we'll have to build a new one. One based on honesty. One based on effort. And one where I'm no longer invisible." Dad nodded through tears. "We'll spend the rest of our lives earning that chance." I didn't move back home. I stayed in my new city. I kept my dream job. I continued building the life I had created for myself. Over time, my parents started calling, not because they needed a favor, but simply to ask how my day had been. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes. Sometimes for an hour. Slowly, trust began to grow again. Not because they were my parents, but because they finally learned that love is shown through actions, not words. Looking back now, I no longer think of those 17 unanswered calls as the worst night of my life. I think of them as the night I finally found my worth. Because the greatest revenge isn't making people regret losing you. It's becoming so happy, so strong, and so complete, that you never again have to beg anyone to choose you.